Hello and welcome to Number by Color. I'm Todd, and today, as you likely gleaned from the title of this video, I'm here to talk about Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Now you may be wondering, Todd, how can you review that game? You don't even have an Xbox. Well, let me tell you something, friend. I do have an Xbox. In my review of the first Ori, I said I liked it so much that I was eyeing a 1X. Need I say more? Actually, yeah, let me say more. I was so eager to play Will of the Wisps that I actually borrowed my friend's spare Xbox One, got myself a $1 Game Pass subscription, and played through the game. A pretty convenient series of events. By the way, don't mind this set because I'm trying to move stuff around and I know it's not really that exciting visually. I don't know if it was really that exciting before. But as you can see, this thing is still here. But I have this little shelf over here with this sheet on it. So that's a thing that's happening. Don't mind that, please. Just mind, I don't know what you want to mind. Mind whatever you want, actually, but don't mind that. So Ori and the Will of the Wisps is an Xbox One and PC game that released in March of 2020. Fun fact, the first Ori released in March of 2015. That's a full 5 years between releases. If you're new to this franchise, they are Metroidvania style games, developed by Moon Studios, published by Microsoft, and this time the game is a little bit more well-rounded, having taken inspiration from some of its peers that have released within the last several years. So with all that being said, let's get into the review. The story in Will of the Wisps is much more integrated than it was the first time around. In the first game, Ori was basically alone, trying to restore the forest. His seemingly only friend had died, and the tone was somber. This game starts on a much happier note. However, Ori and his friend get separated, and as such, he heads out to find them. It's not a complicated story, but it's got the same charm as the first, which is what helps make it work. And as opposed to being in the forest alone, there are characters all throughout the journey that befriend and help Ori. This manifests primarily in a hub village where many of the friends you meet eventually hang out. This helped me feel more connected to the world and its characters because I was no longer exploring just for the sake of it. I now had a group of friends to go back to, whether to just chat or to purchase new abilities. Even though there isn't a lot of depth to the characters themselves, that charm I mentioned a moment ago still comes through. As far as the overall plot goes, it essentially comes down to Ori needing to find the Will of the Wisps to restore the world. It's by no means a complex or complicated story, but as I mentioned, these games do a great job of characterizing the world's inhabitants. Even some of the villainous characters feel sympathetic in their depictions. Story is not the main thing I look for in this kind of game, but I do appreciate Ori's stories. Moving on to gameplay, this is where we really start to see what Moon Studios has been cooking up over the last 5 years. Going into this, my expectation was that we would get gameplay at least as fun as the first game. However, as a gamer, a sequel simply having the same gameplay is never enough. Luckily, Will of the Wisps brings back many of the platforming mechanics that I liked, while also iterating on the formula enough to make this game feel very different. Let's get the returning mechanics out of the way first. Yes, you'll be jumping and platforming a lot in this game. You'll be using enemies and projectiles to launch yourself into the air. You'll be learning new abilities from spirit trees, you'll be collecting health and energy boosts and ability points, and you will die a lot. Speaking of dying, one of my small gripes with the first game was that you had to constantly be using your energy to save the game, or else you might lose a lot of progress. This game removes that need by saving for you, with a pretty generous checkpoint system. I no longer had to worry about making sure to save every few minutes for fear of missing a ledge or not understanding what I was supposed to be doing, which, by the way, still happened a lot. Apart from dying, many aspects of the first game's exploration and ability systems have also been improved, mostly by way of being changed entirely. Unlocking more of the map no longer consists of finding map stones. Instead, you must buy maps off a traveling cartographer. And instead of learning new abilities from a skill tree, you can now purchase new combat abilities from a trainer in the hub town. These are typically weapons or attacks, and they can be upgraded and improved by using ability points. passive abilities now come in the form of spirit shards, which are accessories that you can equip that offer a variety of character enhancements. In the beginning, you can only equip a few, but you can unlock additional slots over time. Even these can be upgraded and improved using ability points. This system is highly reminiscent of Hollow Knight, but even still, it's one that I enjoy, so I'm okay with the similarities. That's not even it though, there's a lot more to this game that I won't go in depth on. Like, there are now side quests given to you by villagers and other characters you meet. There are some inhabitants of the hub town that require certain collectible items that, when you find those items and give them over, those characters expand the hub town, opening up new areas to explore, which usually result in getting more ability points to use for upgrading. There are also spirit trials and combat shrines, the latter of which expands how many spirit shard accessories you can equip. This game has a lot more than the first one, and overall this makes the experience really fun and highly customizable. I really do enjoy this game, but there are some frustrating and tedious aspects that I have to mention for the sake of thoroughness. This isn't necessarily a huge sticking point for me, but there's a section of this game where you have to travel in a dark area of the world using special light to guide you, and you have to stay in the light or you'll die. It really slows down the pacing of the game, and it can be a little frustrating when you're not really sure where you're supposed to be going and can't even look ahead, because it's dark. Another aspect I never liked that much that's back from the first game is the chase sequences. I think they're shorter and less frustrating overall, but they still were my least favorite parts of the game. Often you have to just start running away from whatever's chasing you, and a lot of the time it's difficult to get a bearing on the environment around you and where you can and can't jump to. The foreground and background sometimes blend together too well, making it hard to tell when a ledge is a ledge you can land on and when it's set decoration. And since you really don't have time to stop and see what you're doing, if you miss or overshoot a jump, you have to start the entire chase again. But like I said, these sections are definitely improved from the first game, and having a good checkpoint system means you can immediately try again when you die, but these are still the worst parts of these games for me. The art of Ori is still great. This game retains the same hand-painted look, but steps it up several notches. Environments and characters look amazing, foliage and environmental objects are much more fluid and intricate, and the overall level design is really well done. The one thing that held it back at times is the fact that some things look pretty bad on a base Xbox One. Really bad, actually. Like PlayStation 1 bad. Fortunately, that doesn't persist for the entire game, and there is still a lot to enjoy looking at. And I'm sure that problem is less noticeable or existent on the 1S and 1X. The ethereal music is back, and it's just as solid this time around. I don't think there were any standout tracks for me, but that's not a bad thing. Everything fits well with what the game is trying to do, from the anxiety of the chase sequences to the emotional crescendos of some of the more heartfelt scenes. The music is enjoyable all around. As you may recall, I played Ori and the Blind Forest on the Nintendo Switch, so I didn't have the pleasure of getting achievements, but this time around, I was all about it. I'd say the achievement list for the Will of the Wisps is pretty standard for this kind of game. There are a handful for completing story sections, getting all the collectibles, maxing out health and energy, etc. But the ones that always frustrate me are the ones that require you to replay the game. And I know, that's kind of the point of it, and I'm not saying it's bad to have them, but they just don't appeal to me. This game has trophies for playing on hard mode, not ever touching specific types of water, beating the game without dying, and beating the game in under 4 hours. Like I said, fairly standard for a Metroidvania, but if you're going for 100%, you'll likely want to plan it out ahead of time. Overall, this game is a solid improvement over the first in almost every way. Yes, there were still some annoying things brought over, like the chases, but there were enough improvements and changes made that I really can't fault the rest of the experience for having a few annoying sections. I honestly don't know how long it took me to beat the game because the clock almost never stopped running, even when the Xbox was off, so it says it took me almost 292 hours, but I think it was probably closer to 8 to 10 like the first game. One other thing that I do want to mention is that there were occasionally some serious performance issues on the base Xbox One, and I've even heard that they happened on the One X. I no longer have access to the game, so I can't check if it's been patched, but there were a lot of times where the game stuttered while loading, like it completely froze for a few seconds. It never hindered me in the sense that I died unexpectedly, but it happened a lot more often the further I got into the game. I also experienced more than a few game crashes, but like I said, I don't have access to the game anymore to check, but hopefully those issues have been cleared up. Regardless, they should not be a deterrent for you to play the game. So I'll be honest, even though I really enjoyed my time with this game, I didn't have quite the level of excitement playing it as I did with the first game. And I don't know if that's because it's a sequel, or because I already knew some of the world and characters. I don't know if it's because of some of the performance issues. I'm not sure. In any case, as I mentioned, I still really enjoyed my time with this game, and with all the improvements made to the core mechanics, I can definitely strongly recommend this to anybody who's a fan of the genre. And with things still being a bit dicey out in the real world, now is a great time to take a break from reality and play Ori and the Will of the Wisps for a weekend or two. Well, that'll do it for this review. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. Stay safe, and I will see you next time.